Hi everyone, I wanted to make a quick introduction video to introduce both myself and my purpose for doing this interview series with Culadasa. So as some of you may know, I'm Juno and I've been a student of Culadasa for about 3 years now. And like many of you, I was introduced to him through his book, The Mind Illuminated, and then being really impressed by it and really enjoying the method and starting up a practice of my own, I applied to be in his teacher training program, to which I was accepted, and it kind of all went from there. And a few months ago, I reached out to Culadasa and proposed to him that we do this interview series. So I've always really enjoyed reading hagiographies and stories about people's spiritual journeys, and there are a number of good ones that I'm going to recommend to you now if you are interested in this, and just to give you an idea of what inspired me to do these videos. So there are several about the life of the Buddha, such as by Karen Armstrong or Bhikkhu Analayo. And then there's a wonderful compilation called The Disciples of the Buddha, which I can really recommend. It's fantastically written and it's very accessible. Now, the problem with these sorts of ones is that they're so ancient that the stories are very difficult to pick apart from myth and legend. And of course, naturally, these stories have been mixed in with those things as time has passed and stories were passed on. So I've also really enjoyed reading contemporary accounts of spiritual journeys and awakening, and some wonderful ones that I've read were I Give You My Life by Ayakema. She was a German Jew who escaped the Holocaust and then went on to lead a very exciting life, adventuring and exploring around the world with her family before becoming a Buddhist nun and a renowned teacher of the jhanas. And I think she started seriously, or she became a nun, seriously started practicing in her 50s. Then there's a book by Jack Caulfield called Living Dharma, which is about 12 Buddhist masters, people like Mahasi Sayadaw and Ajahn Chah. And it's fantastic. Each one of them tells their life story and also their methods and their particular flavor of Buddhist practice. There's one that's less well known called A Record of Awakening by Aloka, a man named David Smith, who was an Englishman who worked as a gardener his whole life, but also meditated and traversed the stages of awakening, and eventually went on to be a teacher as well. One of my favorite accounts is a book about the life of Dipa Ma, an Indian woman who suffered greatly and suffered great tragedy in her family, was a widow and lost some of her children, died, and yet she became an acknowledged and highly realized and compassionate Buddhist teacher despite these humble beginnings. And if you have any suggestions for fantastic books like that I haven't mentioned here, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to take a look. As I said, I really enjoy these kinds of books. Anyway, overall, the point: most people come into meditation and Dharma practice, like many of the people I've just mentioned, because they've had intimate experiences of suffering, and the unsteadiness of life, tragedy, loss, pain, heartbreak, grief and death. And generally it is not people who are satisfied or content with their lives that seek out this kind of training. So in other interviews that Culadasa has done over the years, and I recommend the ones he's done with Michael Taft or Guru Viking. I'm sure there are others that I'm not thinking of now, but he's talked about snippets about his own traumatic childhood and other problems such as difficult marriages and facing serious illness, but he's never told the whole story in such a way that we can learn from his experiences. And apart from a few references in TMI to his own struggles in his meditative journey, we didn't get to know much about John at all in that book. I know the newer edition has an introduction which has a bit more information in it, but really we don't know what stage 3 was like for him, or what stream entry was like for him. And because of this lack of knowledge about our teachers, we often start thinking about them as superhuman gurus or near perfect beings, which is a huge mistake. It is, after all, only through these very human experiences of failure and pain and missteps that they learned, and that we really learn and grow and change. So these interviews are an opportunity for John Yates to talk about how he became Culadasa, and more importantly, to share his life experiences, warts and all, so that we can learn from them. And specifically that anyone, no matter what difficulties they experience, be it trauma or mental illness or disease, can benefit from ultimately being free from their suffering. So my intention here was to let Culadasa tell his story in his own way, in as much detail as he is comfortable doing, and then connect his life story and events to his path of practice and spiritual growth, development, and realization. After looking at his life story, I will be asking Culadasa a few more questions, general questions about awakening, and some other topics that I hope will be of interest to you, as well as, topics such as mental illness, sexual desire, what awakening really is, and dealing with death and illness. I want to apologize for my lack of technical skill in putting this whole thing together. As you can see, they're not very sophisticated. I have only edited them to edit out interruptions that we had, like phones ringing and that sort of thing. And I also, I have to apologize for my inexperience in doing this type of interview. It took some time for us to find our feet, and necessarily we started off with a lot more storytelling or narrative in describing John's early life, because he hadn't started a spiritual practice then. So as the videos proceed, I think you'll find we get much more into the meaning and connection to spiritual practice. Now, I realize for a lot of people this may not be of interest, but I have personally gained a lot of insight into the Dharma and my own practice and the possibilities of this path by listening to him. And I really want to thank him for his generosity and candor in talking to me. I think you'll agree that he was incredibly forthcoming. And I found just listening to all the struggles that he's been through really inspiring, to the tune of, same as I felt reading, Ayakema or deepened or Aloka's books, that if they can do it with all those difficulties in their life, then surely I can. And so I just hope these videos are as interesting and valuable to you as they have been to me. And may all beings be free of suffering. Thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy them.